inside and brought me $1,200 in cash. I saw the pity and disgust in her eyes as she was handing me the money. Then, when I thought it wouldn't get worse, my little 12-year-old Emily looked at me innocently and asked, "Daddy, are you broke?" I can't tell you how humiliated I felt when those words came out of her mouth. How did my life become such a mess? I felt like my manhood was being snatched away from me and that I was failing as a father. I kissed my daughter goodbye and thanked her mother without being able to look her in the eyes. During the entire ride back home, I was feeling defeated. So I decided to stop by the local bar for a drink, trying to come to terms with what had just happened. As I took a sip of my drink, I spotted a guy sitting across the bar. I don't know if it was God or the universe, but something told me I should go strike up a conversation with him. So I went and introduced myself. I found out his name was Robert. With the alcohol taking the edge off, I ended up spilling out my guts to him. I then discovered he's also been through some tough times and that his wife cheated on him, but somehow he didn't look bothered at all. The conversation started flowing naturally, and Robert started talking about the power of manifestation and the universe. I honestly thought he started to get too drunk and was talking gibberish. But when I glanced over, I noticed he had the keys to a BMW and wore a Rolex on his wrist, which looked like it was worth at least $15,000. I hesitated for a moment, but then I asked, pointing at his watch, "Hey man, do you mind if I ask what you do for a living?" His facial expressions then suddenly changed like he's seen a ghost. "Are you a cop?" "Of course not." Part of me expected him to start telling me about some kind of shady business or drug dealing. But instead, he said, "I quit working for NASA a few months ago because I discovered something I shouldn't have seen that made me a lot of money." Robert then whispered, "Have you ever heard about the pineal gland?" Well, I know it's a tiny organ inside the brain that controls many vital hormones. But what does this have to do with money and NASA? Look, NASA scientists are obsessed with the pineal gland. They know it's the door to unlocking our third eye and manifesting unlimited wealth and abundance. Robert went on to tell me he stumbled on secret research from NASA showing their scientists were researching this mysterious gland in 1969, 1968, and 1970. If you don't know what the pineal gland is, it's a tiny little organ inside your brain that commonly is believed to be our third eye. Jesus and Buddha had both known about the pineal gland and its power as our third eye. The ancient statues of Buddha all have a swirl at the center of his forehead, and experts believe this to represent his powerful pineal gland. Also, ancient depictions of Sumerian gods holding pine cones are also widely accepted to represent our pineal gland. The ancient Egyptian eye of Horus is said to be a representation of the pineal gland as well. It's like this third eye was the one common denominator between all the wisest and most enlightened individuals throughout history. And now modern science is catching up to what our ancestors knew all along about the pineal gland. In fact, Israeli scientists have recently discovered microscopic rhombohedral crystals inside our pineal gland. These crystals have piezoelectric properties, which means that they can become electrically activated and can start calling energy back to them, building their own electromagnetic field. This is essentially turning your entire body into a transceiver, which allows you to send and receive information. Except the information you're able to send and receive are directly from the universe and these other higher vibrational dimensions. Robert went on to tell me that NASA scientists started researching the pineal gland right after the Soviet Union launched their first ever satellite called Sputnik 1 in 1957. This unexpected success caused a lot of fear in the United States and demonstrated that the Soviets had the capability to deliver nuclear weapons over long distances. President John F. Kennedy wasn't going to let the Soviets challenge American claims of military and technological superiority during the Cold War, so he urged for immediate space exploration. Now, as you may know, astronauts can spend up to a year in space. They need to be in optimal physical shape to withstand the hardships of low gravity. And since the pineal gland releases most of the body's important hormones, like melatonin and serotonin, as well as controls the circadian rhythm, it's important that astronauts' pineal gland is in tip-top shape so they can sleep well, have their hormones in check, and finish missions properly. Now, NASA wanted to gain every advantage they could for their space missions, so they started heavily investing in researching the powers of the pineal gland. But they didn't know that what they were about to discover holds the key to connecting with the universe and transforming your life. The first research on the pineal gland started in 1968 and 1969. The thing is, until today, the details of such research are still hidden from the public. Robert told me NASA discovered that a calcified pineal gland was messing with their astronauts' brains. They were not going to risk wasting billions of dollars on space exploration if the astronauts couldn't complete the space mission properly. Calcified pineal gland, how does that ever happen, I asked. Can you handle the truth? Robert whispered. Skeptical, I nodded and kept listening. See, right after World War II, there was a global agenda to calcify everybody's pineal gland to keep them under control. This started during World War II, when the Nazi Party confiscated Freemason documents about the pineal gland and third eye activation. They knew if they could shut down the source of supernatural abilities, the pineal gland, they would gain an advantage over their enemies. You see, unlike most of the brain structures that have right and left hemispheres and are protected by the blood-brain barrier, the pineal gland sits right in the center and is not protected by the blood-brain barrier. This simply means that this tiny gland can be influenced by toxins and chemicals in the bloodstream. The Nazis knew about this, so they started experimenting with adding a chemical called fluoride to the drinking water of the ghettos and prison camps. They found out that fluoride made people more docile, subservient, as well as sterilizing them. It was an effective way to dominate their enemies while also reducing the population. This is why Germany fluoridated Poland's water supply before they invaded the country. Many of those Nazi scientists found their way to America and were granted immunity despite their crimes against humanity. They brought with them all the knowledge and information on the human experiments that they carried out. This is why in 1945, Norman T. Kirk, the Surgeon General of the U.S. Army, during the height of the Second World War, sponsored a study about fluoride in the United States. Then, Grand Rapids, Michigan became the first community in the world to add fluoride to tap water. As of today, fluoride is added to everything. It has been infesting the water we drink, the food we eat, and is found in almost every toothpaste out there. Harvard scientists have shown that fluoride is highly toxic. This chemical accumulates in the pineal gland and calcifies it, which blocks its activation. The pineal gland starts to look like this. On paper, the reason why fluoride was added to tap water in 1945 is to prevent tooth decay in children. However, a recent study from Harvard scientists in 2019 showed that fluoride decreased IQ for children by 7 points. 7 points isn't a small number when we're talking about the brain. And what is IQ really? A measure of power of the human mind, which is exactly what the pineal gland represents. Now, if you think you're safe from fluoride, think again. According to Harvard, 90% of the tap water in the United States is